Lieutenant Mara Chun awoke to the sickening crunch of metal twisting against rock. Her world tumbled in slow, nauseating arcs as her battered search vessel, the Peregrine, careened off the jagged canyon wall of Vega X. Red warning lights flashed across the cockpit's curved viewport, casting everything in a bloody, urgent glow. Instruments sparking, she fought the straps of her harness, breath rasping through her helmet's life support system. They'd come looking for the lost relay beacon, an ancient piece of alien technology that, if reactivated, could open a new fold of hyperspace corridors for humanity's expanding frontier. For months, her team had scanned every fragment of data, every distorted star chart, until only she remained. The others had turned back at the orbital cut, deeming the mission too perilous. But Mara's instincts, sharpened by years as a salvage runner, told her there was more at stake than pride or profit. Now she dangled in a canyon only mapped in half-burned legends, towering spires of iridescent crystal, choked with swirling dust devils. Winds howled like angry spirits, rattling what remained of the Peregrine's hull. In any other system, she'd be dead within hours if not minutes. Her crackled static, nothing more. The backup battery for the distress beacon was dying. Each heartbeat pounded in her ears. The horror of isolation sank in. As the last of her power cells fizzled, Mara activated her helmet mic. Command. Do you copy? Mayday. Silence answered. She swallowed a sob. The red glare of the cockpit instruments dimmed as power waned. Tears blurred her vision, mingling with the sweat already beading on her forehead. She toggled the controls, switching to auxiliary reserves, just enough to vent the cabin and detach the cockpit module from the rest of the broken vessel. When the hatch ejected, the canyon winds instantly snatched it away. The module plummeted 20 meters before grinding to a stop on a shard of obsidian rock. Inside, Mara checked her vitals. Oxygen good for 6 hours, suit integrity intact, though the cum was beyond repair. She was alone, stranded on a planet. Known for swallowing the unwary, with grim determination, she climbed out into the dust-choked air. Every foot of the descent crumbled beneath her boots. The narrow ledge below her only route out seemed to greet her like the edge of an abyss. Blinking through the settling grit, she peered down the canyon, where the rocky walls glowed with strange pulsing veins of crystal, an otherworldly luminescence, beckoning and malevolent. She slid down, one careful step at a time, cradling her side where a shard of metal had cut her during the crash. Blood stained her uniform fluorescent. White at the edges, proof that healing stimulants in her medkit had activated. But the canyon was vast, and each breath grew more labored in the swirling dust dot by sunset, such as it was. For Vega X's sun barely crested the high horizon. Her legs trembled beneath her weight. She paused on a narrow shelf to catch her breath, scanning for any sign of a rescue craft. The glint of polished hull, the drone of engines. Nothing. Above, the sky fractured into pale yellows and grays. Below, the canyon gaped like a wound in the planet. That's when she saw it. A shimmer, distant, yet unmistakable. At first, she thought it a trick of light on the crystal veins. But the shimmer resolved into a sleek outline, a star skiff, no human ship employed. It bore the signature curves and luminous plating of the Sylph class, rumored to belong to the elusive Areva. Her heart leapt. Arevatales told they were a nomadic alien people, ghost-like in myth, who cared nothing for human affairs. Yet here, against all odds, one had answered what she believed to be a one-way distress call. The skiff hovered beyond the rim, engines whispering a soft, high-pitched hum that cut through the canyon's roar. Mara raised her arm in the universal gesture of distress, fingers trembling. She held her breath, braced for fear or aggression. But the skiff eased forward, as if drawn by her will. It descended on silent thrusters, settling onto a widened ledge with impossible grace. A ramp extended, glowing with pale bioluminescence. From the shadows emerged the pilot, tall and slender, skin rippling with shifting hues, pale lavender merging into soft turquoise. Its eyes were large, liquid, and utterly calm. No weapons, no armor, only a long flowing garment that seemed woven from starlight itself. Mara found her voice, hoarse. "Thank you," she managed, voice cracking. She stepped forward, instincts warring with caution. The Areva inclined its head, a gesture that felt both alien and profoundly welcoming. It spoke telepathically, she realized, for no sound issued from its lips. Its thoughts were like ripples in a still pond, gentle and clear. "You are hurt. Come." A hand extended, fingers glowing at the tips. Mara placed her palm against them. Warmth flooded through her, seeping into her cuts, knitting flesh with a tender pulse. Pain ebbed away, replaced by an unfamiliar serenity. But through that calm, a resolve crystallized. These beings had reached beyond centuries of indifference to save a single human life. Such an act bore a debt one she would carry for the rest of her days. Moments later, the sylph carried her into its hold, where bioluminescent panels flared to life, illuminating shelves of alien tools and healing pods. The hatch sealed with a faint hiss. As the skiff lifted away from Vega X's gaping maw, Mara pressed her forehead to the transparent canopy, watching the jagged canyon walls recede in the swirling nebula light. The Areva pilot rested a hand on her shoulder, conveying a promise that transcended words. "One day, when you call for aid, we will come." Mara closed her eyes, tears sliding free, not of fear, but of profound gratitude and hope. As hyperspace engines primed and reality folded around them, Mara knew that her life, and perhaps the fate of human exploration, had been forever altered by this unlikely ally. The debt was hers to honor, and she vowed silently to answer their call, whatever the cost. Lieutenant Mara Chun arrived at the citadel of New Alexandria not as a hero, but as an enigma. Hollow billboards along the Grand Promenade broadcast the latest Terran achievements. Orbital habitats bristling with solar arrays, the first to genetically stabilized crops on Mars, and the ever-expanding map of human warp lanes. Yet no mention was made of a single woman rescued by a phantom alien scout. To most, her story was no more than a musing tavern tale, a legend of Vega X. Inside the vaulted marble halls of the United Earth Coalition, Mara trudged through a gauntlet of bureaucrats and press drones. Her medical scans, filed promptly upon her return, documented the uncanny healing she'd received aboard the Sylph. Wounds sealed without scars, a neural realignment that deepened her senses, and, most unsettling of all, a faint echo in her mind of the alien pilot's voice. She tried to describe the telepathic communion, the way it felt like warm water rippling through thought, but the Coalition's xenopsychologists had labeled it inconclusive. "Your injuries have healed beyond expectation, Lieutenant." Admiral Sovak's hologram flickered before her, face stern beneath a shock of silver hair. "Your mission data from Vega X are indecipherable. We have no coordinates, no readings. Do you understand why we must treat this as unverified?" Mara's jaw tightened. "With respect, Admiral, the Sylph's NavArc imprint on my CUM module is unique. The signature should be in our Xena-class archives." He paused. The flicker of uncertainty in his holographic eyes was the closest she'd seen him to doubt. Then he steepled his fingers. "Archive records show nothing. Until we have proof, we cannot allocate resources to legend chasing." Proof. The word echoed in her head like a taunt. She had fallen from the sky, touched by something beyond human science, returned with a promise, and yet the promise lay buried beneath policy and probabilities. For 2 years, Mara lived at the intersection of fascination and skepticism. At the Coalition Academy, she lectured on salvage operations and deep space survival. but students more often quizzed her on the Areva. Every blue-skinned child on Earth knew the tales of the sylph. Every instructor called her captive to myth. Her research grants went unfunded. Her superiors counseled caution. Still, she pressed on. Nights found her poring over hyperspace fold diagrams, running simulations on her damaged flight recorder, tracing stray data fragments through galactic transit logs. She constructed an improvised beacon emulator, hoping to ping the Areva network. Months passed before the first anomaly flickered on her viewer, a millisecond blip, repeating every 11 days, buried in the background of a corporate survey. Mission dot, she chased the blip across 3 systems, only to find a derelict survey buoy, its data core fried. Each dead end steeled her resolve. If the sylph's people orbited the fringes of known space, they must be listening still, somewhere. Their outposts orbited frozen gas giants or hid in nebulae shadow. They'd answered her cry once, if they heard her thoughts at all, and Mara vowed that one day she would return the favor dot in the quiet hours, when New Alexandria's triple moons rose in tandem, and the city hummed with artificial dawn. Mara would reconnect with the echo in her mind. The pilot's voice had no words, but images, a field of crystalline antenna arrays, humming with latent energy, a throne room carved into a spinning asteroid, a braided canal of starlight flowing between ships. Sometimes she felt the pilot's grief, as if a silent lament rolled through the telepathic bond, mourning something lost centuries ago. At first, these reveries frightened her. She feared she was going mad, losing the boundary between human thought and alien intrusion. But gradually, she learned to navigate the silent corridor between minds. And in that mind space, she made her vow. If ever you call on me, I will answer. A thread of her own thoughts stretched out, seeking a return echo, a promise wrapped in starlight. Opportunity arrived disguised as crisis. Reports streamed in of a stutter in the hypergate, linking Europa Nova to the Sagittarius corridor. Cargo ships reported flickering lights in the void. Crude vessels suffered ghostly power surge malfunctions, and a mining consortium lost contact with 2 rigs. The coalition's preliminary analysis blamed equipment failure, and then whispers of an alien signature drifted through the technical channels. Mara was summoned to the Strategic Command Council. The chamber's oval table was ringed by flag-bearing envoys and armored generals. Screens along the walls displayed the mottled static of the compromised gate. Ambassador Ashok Varial of the Transgalactic Accord, a diplomat whose reputation for daring made him a lightning rod among conservatives, leaned forward. Lieutenant Chen, your experience with an Areva skiff is unique. We need insight into this signature. If the Areva are involved accidentally or otherwise, we must engage before hostilities erupt. A murmur swelled around the table. Some scoffed. Others exchanged skeptical glances. Mara felt the weight of every eye, some hopeful, most doubtful. She drew a breath. With permission, I propose we dispatch a reconnaissance fleet to the affected sector. I volunteered to lead the mission. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Ambassador Varial's lips curved into a hint of a smile. Your zeal is commendable. You'll have the fleet. Informally, at first. Keep this out of the press until we know more. The council erupted into debate over logistics and resource allocations, while Mara replayed her vow in her mind. Years of scorn and dismissal dissolved in that moment. They had overlooked her because they denied what they could not see. Now, they turned to her because the threat, whatever it was, defied human engineering. After the session, Varial escorted Mara to the balcony overlooking the city's trinary spires. The 3 moons hovered low, their twin shadows melding on the marble walkways below. You realize, he said softly, that if this goes poorly, you'll be the face of failure. Mara met his gaze. I also realize that if I succeed, It could be the first step toward an alliance that changes everything. He nodded, hands clasped behind his back. Then may your promise hold true. That night, Mara returned to her quarters, a modest suite overlooking the neon thoroughfare. She unpacked a single relic from Vega X, a fragment of the sylph's hull plating, etched with swirling glyphs. Even in stasis it pulsed with a gentle warmth. She placed her palm on it, closed her eyes, and sent the summons through the bond she had nurtured. We ride at dawn. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, deep in the recesses of her mind, a whisper of acceptance stirred, the faintest glimmer of eons old light. When she opened her eyes, the silvery fragment shone brighter than before, as though the promise had been remembered. Mara-chan allowed herself a small, determined smile. The die was cast. In the silent promise of an alien touch lay the fragile hope of unity and the spark that would ignite the stars. Dawn broke over the orbital station Astreus, its domed hangar bay alive with the hum of fusion drives and the clatter of maintenance drones. Lieutenant Mara-chan stood on the observation deck, staring at the assembled ships. 30 sleek reconnaissance frigates painted in human cobalt and silver, flanked by 5 battered salvage tenders and 2 heavy carriers bristling with railguns. At her side, Captain Ellen Voss of the carrier Argonaut tapped a datapad anxiously. "Signals fluxing," Voss reported. "We've traced the anomaly to just beyond the Varth expanse. Navcoms can't hold a steady lock. There's too much interference," Mara nodded. "That's where the relay beacon first went dark. Prepare the fleet for quantum jump. I want full sensor sweep on arrival." Below them, flight crews sealed hatches and ran final diagnostics. Mara's heart pounded. This was the moment of truth, the first time. The human fleet would step into the domain that had answered her lone cry for help years ago. With a chorus of cascading light, the Armada slipped through phase space. Seconds stretched into eternities as starfields blurred into ribbons of color. When normal space reasserted itself, the fleet emerged into a dark void laced with scintillating rock spires, cast-off shards from an ancient collapsed star. Between them hung the skeleton of the rogue relay array, its towers inert and half-buried in drifting debris. "Status?" Mara's voice over the comm was steady. "Power cores offline," answered Science Officer Wren. "Hull plating corroded. No life signs on the control platforms." She studied the grim tableau. "We'll need to move fast." Captain Voss detached the Argonaut's repair pods. "Frigates, form scanning formation Beta 3. I want every crevice lit." Moments later, a network of sensor drones peeled off the carriers, weaving through the debris field while recon frigates spread out like hunting hawks. The ruins were eerily silent until the first turret on a central tower flared to life, lancing a beam of cobalt plasma at a drone. The drone exploded in a cascade of metal shards. "Automated defenses," Wren shouted. "They've engaged." Alarm. Klaxons reverberated as railguns and pulse cannons on the array's platform spat fire. Human shields shimmered under impact. Frigate gunners returned fire, but the defenses recalibrated, directing their weapons with uncanny precision. Mara's comm crackled. "This is Lieutenant Chan. Hold formation. Target their targeting arrays, we disable their eyes, and they're blind." Under her direction, missiles and disruptor charges arced toward the glowing sensor nodes. Several detonated, and half the defensive batteries snapped offline. But new ones glowed to life in their place, fed by the array's dormant power grid. Then, through the haze of smoke and plasma, a strange soft light rippled at the edge of sensor range. A corridor of glittering particles coalesced aphasic. Gate opening outside normal space. Ships on the fringe of the fleet paused as a drab gray skiff emerged, its hull the same silvery translucence as Mara's memory. The sylph had come. It glided between the battered defense towers, and from its underbelly gleamed crystalline pods that emitted a pulsing resonance. At Mara's command console, a new signature flashed. Dozens more phasic corridors, weaving through the debris like glowing threads. They're deploying a formation, Ren breathed. Looks like a protective lattice around us. On screen, Mara ordered. The view screen shifted to show a growing web of silver hulls, scout skiffs and corvettes in every direction. Each bore the same graceful curves and bioluminescent markings. Their weapons were different arc fields that flickered in crystalline patterns, disabling guns and power conduits without obliterating them. Human ships under fire found their shields bolstered as sylph corvettes crossed in front of incoming plasma beams, dissipating the blasts in coruscating showers of light. In turn, human railguns found new targets as sylph scouts pierced the array defenses with precision torpedoes that shattered turret control modules in a single shot. Mara felt the thrumming of that ancient bond strengthen, a resonant chord echoing through her mind. She realized then that this was more than aid. It was a declaration of trust. Where human firepower faltered, sylph ingenuity triumphed. Where sylph weaponry lacked punch, human potency held the line. Combined assault. Mara whispered, half to herself. Let's finish this. She keyed her comm. All units, flank port and starboard, converge on the central core. Sylph vessels, focus your crystalline torpedoes on the main power nexus. Human frigates, prepare to breach. The Allied armada wheeled in unison. From both sides, converging salvos ripped through the last active towers. A shockwave rattled every hull as the central nexus ignited, its dormant fusion reactor roaring to life. The old relay array blinked and shuddered, then emitted a pulse of pale blue light that washed over the fleet. Silence fell. Power grids reset. The array's control platforms hummed, awaiting input. In that moment of calm, Mara stared at the view ahead. The once dead beacon now flickered with possibility. Relay is active, Ren announced, voice thick. Coordinates incoming. It's pointing to a junction of 5 uncharted jump corridors. Mara's chest tightened. Prepare for data download and route analysis. This could open entire sectors we've never dreamed of. Above the din of revived engines and crew cheers, the Sylph flagship glowed softly, as if smiling. Mara closed her eyes, flooded with gratitude. They had answered her call, and now the promise they had shared in that distant canyon would reshape the map of human exploration. The stars themselves seemed to lean in, eager to witness what would come next. Mara Chen watched from the Argonaut's bridge as the resurrected relay array thrummed back to life. Pale blue conduits of hyperspatial energy spiraled outward, weaving between human frigates and sylph corvettes alike. The hum of renewed possibility reverberated through every hull, binding the two fleets in a shared purpose. Core integrity at 99%. Reported Science Officer Ren. Stabilization protocols online. Captain Ellen Voss exhaled, tension slipping from her shoulders. They did it, Lieutenant. We actually did it. Mara nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on the glowing lattice of the array. Not we. She turned to the shimmering scout skiff moored alongside. Through the viewport, the Areva pilot's liquid moonlight eyes met hers in a moment of wordless recognition. The alien's hand flickered with bioluminescence, acknowledging their bond. Below decks, repair crews of both species worked side by side. Human engineers passed power cells to Sylph technicians, who retuned them with crystalline modulators. Sylph medics used their gentle touch to accelerate human wound healers, while human medics taught the Areva how to calibrate Earth's nanite injectors. Murmurs of fascination and gratitude wove through the corridors, dissolving millennia of mistrust in the array's control chamber. Mara and Ambassador Varial stood before the console that would reintegrate the beacon into the galactic network. Varial's fingers hovered above the activation glyphs, ancient symbols now legible through joint research. Beyond the viewport, the ghostly specter of the collapsed star's debris field glimmered like cosmic confetti. "Once this goes live," Varial said softly, "the Sagittarius corridor will link to routes through the Orion Nexus and beyond. Entire star systems' centuries of lost lore will open to us." Mara placed a steadying hand on his arm. "And to them," she added, glancing at the Areva representatives pooling around the console. "They've earned a stake in this accord." Varial's nod was solemn. He tapped the final sequence. The console flared and a ripple of light pulsed outward, merging human and sylph data streams. On the main viewer, hyperspace lanes blossomed like a cathedral's stained glass rose window, each corridor labeled in dual scripts. Back on the Argonaut's upper deck, a provisional summit convened beneath the array towers. Human admirals exchanged cautious bows with Areva envoys. Varial took the dais, flanked by Mara and the lead Areva pilot, her rescuer, now ambassador of a people who once hovered at the edge of myth. "When I was lost," Mara began, voice steady in the hush, "they found me in the caverns of Vega IX. No treaty bound them. No promise compelled them. They answered a single human plea." She paused, meeting countless eyes, blue, green, silver. "Today, we answered theirs. United beyond the stars, we restored what was broken. Together, we opened pathways not for conquest, but for discovery, for cooperation, for a future where no being walks alone." A hush gave way to a swelling tide of applause. First human, then Areva, then a harmonious blend as crews on both fleets echoed the sentiment. As the sun of the nearby star cast its soft glow across the reactivated array, Mara slipped away to the Sylph flagship's observation deck. The Areva pilot met her there, their forms silhouetted against the curtain of hyperspace lanes. Around them, the twin fleets drifted in orbit, a testament to a promise kept across worlds and years. The pilot reached out, fingertips brushing. Mara's. In that touch bloomed a vision. Children of both species exploring glass gardens on distant worlds, traders exchanging star spices in alien bazaars, scientists unearthing relics of shared history. A future woven from threads of empathy and wonder. Mara's heart swelled. "We kept our promise," she whispered. The pilot's thought voice was a cascade of light. "And now, we keep ours." Hyperspace gates flickered open one by one, beckoning. Beyond them lay uncharted realms, and with the bond forged here, humanity. And the Areva would answer every call together. In the silent reaches, where once only stars watched, a new constellation was born. An alliance of souls, united beyond the stars.